it's Jennifer from Flux. In this video, we're going to learn how to make this beautiful Grannytastic wall hanging. I've used some lovely cotton yarn, which comes in tons of colors, so you can really customize it and make any color combination you like. So we're going to be doing a few things. This is a lot of different embellishments and things. So we're going to make some granny squares first, and then learn how to do the join as you go technique to create the main part of our wall hanging. And then we're going to be adding some fringe to the bottom, some tassels, and some pom-poms as well. The finished piece measures about 21 inches from the top of the pom-poms all the way down to the bottom of the fringe. And the main granny part here measures about 11 inches across and 11 inches tall. For this project, you'll need a pair of scissors, a tapestry needle, you'll need a 5.5 millimeter eye crochet hook, you'll need some kind of a stick, so you can use a dowel rod. I had a beautiful set of knitting needles that one of them broke when I was using it. It snapped right in half, and these are really special knitting needles, and I was very upset. So I'm going to be repurposing the remaining knitting needle. I've literally had this sitting in my toolbox for years, not knowing what to do with it. But I'm going to repurpose it because it is very, very pretty. And that will be used to give the structure to hang our piece on. And we're going to learn how to attach that later. So you could use a dowel rod. You could use really anything that's sturdy and not too thick. Okay. So the yarn that we'll be using is called Scrubby Smoothie by Red Heart. Now be sure and check out my Yarn 101 for this. This is a newer yarn from Red Heart, and it's a really nice cotton yarn that comes in tons of colors. It's really easy to work with. And each ball of this is 153 yards. I'm not going to use every last bit of it. So you don't necessarily need 3 balls of this. You could get away with 2 balls of this. But the colors I'll be using are coral and blueberry, and this one is called aqua. So I really like this color combination, but definitely feel free to use any colors you like. And granny squares are a wonderful opportunity to kind of experiment with different color combinations. So let's get started. Okay, so the first part is we're going to be making some of these little squares. And because we're doing the join as you go with the blueberry color, we're just going to make the first 2 rounds and then kind of add them in as we go. So let me show you how to make that first. We're going to need 9 of them. I made a few so far, but we're going to need 9 total. Okay, so let's start with this aqua yarn here because we're going to do this center. Okay, so what you want to do is grab the aqua yarn, and we're going to put a slip knot around on the hook. So wrap the yarn around your fingers, bring the yarn behind that loop you just made, reach in with your hook, bring up a loop, and tighten. Okay? Next, we're going to make a circle or ring in which we'll work the stitches into. So go ahead and chain 4. Wrap yarn around hook, bring it through the loop. That's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then we're going to make that ring. So insert the hook in the chain farthest from the hook. We're going to do a slip stitch. Bring up that loop. Now bring that loop through the loop already on your hook, and then we have the ring that we'll work into. This tail here, we're going to hold it along the edge, and that will weave it in as we go along. So go ahead and chain 3. 1, 2, 3. Then you're going to work a double crochet in the center of the ring. If you're not familiar with the double crochet, you just wrap yarn around hook, insert the hook into the center of the ring, bring up a loop. You'll have 3 loops on the hook. Wrap yarn around hook, bring it through the first 2 loops. Wrap yarn around hook, bring it through the last 2 loops. Okay? So this chain 3 counted as one of our double crochets. So we're going to have a group of 3 here. So then chain 1, and then do the same thing. Work 3 double crochets into the center of the ring this time. So that'll give us another group of 3. 1, 2, and 3. Let me get a little bit more yarn here off my yarn ball. These little squares are so happy and colorful. Okay, so then what you're going to do is chain 1, And then do the same thing. Work 3 double crochets into the center of the ring. And you know what? I'm going to zoom in just a little bit so you can see those stitches a little bit nicer. Okay, so 1 double crochet, 2 double crochet, and 3 double crochet, then chain 1. Okay, and then we're going to do that last little grouping because see how it makes like a little plus. Okay, so work 3 more double crochet, 1, 2, and 3. Then chain 1 one more time, and then count 3 chains up. 1, 2, 3. Insert, bring up a loop, bring that loop through the loop already on your hook, and now we have the center of our square. Okay, so grab your scissors, cut the yarn, go ahead and fasten that yarn off, and now we're ready to work the red round. Okay, so what you can do at this point is flip it over, pull it really, really tight to kind of close up that circle. As a side note, if you prefer the magic ring, definitely feel free to do that instead. Okay, so you can kind of like, what I like to do is kind of open up these corners a little bit so I know where to work next time. Okay, next we're going to grab our red yarn and into any of these corner spaces, insert your hook, bring the red yarn through, or whatever color you're using. The Scrubby Smoothie comes in a ton of colors, so you could do just about anything you like. Okay, we're just tying that new yarn right on, just like that. And then, once again, we're going to hold that tail along the edge as we work. So insert your hook into that corner space, bring up a loop, and chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. Now, as you can see, each one of these is going to be a corner. So the corner is actually 2 groups of the double crochets. Remember those sets of 3s that we did with a chain in between, okay? So this counts as one of the double crochets, that chain 3. So go ahead and work 2 more double crochet into that corner space. So that's 1 and 2. And you can see how it creates that first little grouping, okay? And if you need to push things over a bit, feel free to do that. Chain 1, and now work 3 more double crochets into that corner space. 1, get a little bit more yarn, 2, and 3, okay? So now we have our first little corner and it matches up with the other one, okay? So let's move on to the next corner of our square. We're going to chain 1, hop on over to that next chain 1 space. See how we're skipping over that grouping? And we're going to do the same thing. 3 double crochet, 1, 2, whoops, let's get that, and 3, chain 1, push it over if you need to, and then 3 more double crochet to create that corner. 1, whoops, my yarn split just a little bit. Let's back that up. So that was 1, and then we're making 2 and 3. Chain 1, and then we're going to hop over to that next chain 1 space, okay? It's starting to look very much like these other ones now. And we've also come to a tail. So as you pass by it, just kind of weave it in as you go along by holding it along that edge. Okay, so let's go into that corner space. Remember, we're skipping over that grouping. And we're going to work 3 double crochet. Let's try that again. 1, 2, 3, chain 1, holding that tail along the edge, work your next grouping. 1, 2, and 3, chain 1, And then the next grouping, in that next corner space, same exact thing. 1, 2, and 3 into that corner space, okay? Almost done in the home stretch. Chain 1 and then work 3 more double crochet. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1 and then count 3 chains up where you started and insert into that chain with a slip stitch. So insert the hook. Mine was a little bit buried there. Bring up a loop. Now bring that loop through the loop that's already on your hook, okay? And now our square is complete. So then what you can do is just cut the yarn and fasten off. And don't worry about all the tails so much right now. We can trim those later. So what I was going to do, I'm going to lay this out a little bit because I think I'm going to do a group of 9. Now you could do a group of 4 like this. You could do a group of 6 all in a row. Let me slide that down so you can see a little bit better. But I think I'm going to do more of a square. So I'm going to make 1 more and make my group of 9. And then the next thing we'll do is once I make 1 more, we'll grab this beautiful blueberry yarn and we'll learn how to join them all together, and it'll frame all of them very nicely as well. Okay, so I went ahead and finished all the squares. So what we're going to do is what helps me when we're doing this, because we're going to do the join as you go. So it really helps me to lay everything out the way I want it to go. So we're doing, I'm doing 9. Now, before I mentioned you can do 4, you can make a little one, you could do more of like a rectangle. You can really build it however you want. Just be mindful when you're laying these out that you're laying the right side facing upward. So this is what the back of the square looks like. It looks a little bit different, a little more bumpy in the back, and this is what the right side looks like. So just make sure that the right side is facing up as you lay your squares out. And then we're going to begin joining them all together using our blueberry or whatever color you choose. So grab the blueberry yarn, or again, whatever color you like. Now I am going to pull a little bit of yarn out. Sometimes in manufacturing, when the yarn is being made, you'll see it tied together like this. Mine was early on in my ball, so I'm just going to snip that off. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is grab one of our squares, and we can kind of, I do like to keep these laid out, but we can kind of shift this over for now. Grab one of your squares, and what we're going to do is we're going to put a full round 3 on just this first one, and then the other ones will hook on to this one, okay? So grab your square, and in any of these corner spaces, we're going to tie the new yarn on. Okay, so insert the hook into the corner space, bring the new yarn through, and just simply tie it right on. Same thing we did when we did the round of this coral color. Okay, so holding that tail along the edge as you work, insert the hook into that corner space, bring up a loop, chain 3. 1, 2, 3. Work 2 more double crochets in that corner space. 1 and 2. Then we're going to chain 1, slide that over if you need to, and then work 3 more double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. All right, let me get a little bit more yarn here. All right, so we need to work a side now. We haven't done a side yet. So chain 1, and then the sides are just simply groups of 3 double crochets. So 1, 2, and 3, okay? So that's all for the side spaces. Now chain one once again, and then in that corner space, work another corner. So 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochet. So 1, 2, and 3. I have to say as a side note, I really love all these colors together. Chain 1, and then 3 double crochet. 1. Whoops, let's redo that one. So that was 1. This is 2. 2. And 3. Now my squares are starting to walk around over here. There we go. Okay. Now we're ready to work a side once again. And we're approaching some tails. So just remember to hold those along the edges you work as you approach each one while you're working. Okay, so work our side by working 3 double crochet. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1. Hop on over to that next corner space. And we're just going to do the same thing. 3 double crochet. 1. Wait a minute, my tail is getting a little bit caught up. Oh, there we go. Okay, so that was 1. This is 2 and 3. Chain 1, 3 double crochet. 1, 2. Get a little bit more yarn here. And let's work that last one. 3. Chain 1. All right. And we're working our next side, 3 double crochet. 1. Now, if you're familiar with granny squares and you've made granny squares before, you can kind of skip ahead till the join as you go portion. But if you've never done a granny square, you just need a little refresher. Definitely follow along this part with me. Okay, now we can kind of straighten this out as we go as well. All right, so we did a chain 1, and then let's work that last corner. 3 double crochet. 1, 2, 3, chain 1, 1, 2, and 3, chain 1, our last side space. So just work 3 double crochets into that space there. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1, and then we'll join to close, okay? So count 3 chains up, insert the hook into that chain, and join with a slip stitch. Same thing we've done in the last couple of rows, or rounds rather. Okay, so our first square is complete. So you'll need 1 finished square to begin. Okay, so we're going to cut the yarn, fasten off. Now don't worry about all these ends right now. We're going to deal with all of those later. Okay, straighten out your square, just like that. And then you're ready to grab another square. So we're going to stick with the blueberry. And this one, we're going to hook onto our finished square. So let's just put that one up there for now. Grab your next square. And we're going to start it the way we did this square. So just join, or rather tie on the new yarn. I love the join as you go. It's when I learned how to do that, it was so exciting to be able to make this as you go along and not have to sew everything together. Now, if you like to sew, that's awesome. And sometimes I like to sew things together, but the join as you go is definitely my favorite. Okay, so reinsert your hook back into this corner space, bring up a loop, chain 3. Same thing we've been doing. 1, 2, 3. we're going to work across this top part and then join it on as we get over here, okay? So let's begin it the same way we've been doing. So chain 3, work your 2 double crochets, 1 and 2, and then chain 1, slide things over as needed, and then work 3 double crochets in that corner space. So 1, 2, and 3, okay? Chain 1, work our next side. Same thing we did before. This is started exactly the same way as the square we just made. So we'll work our 3 double crochet, 1, 2, and 3, chain 1. Okay, so we're approaching the point where we want to join them together. So what we're going to do is we're going to join the corners like this. We're going to start with the corner, join the sides. So basically what we want to do is get that corner started, work 3 double crochet into the corner like you normally would. So 1, 2, and 3. Now, if you've ever wanted to make a join as you go blanket, this is a great project to kind of get started on the join as you go technique. It's sort of a mini little Afghan. Okay, so we did our 3 double crochets in the corner space. Before we do, we're not going to do the chain 1, but instead we're going to take this opportunity to join them together. So instead of doing your chain 1 at this point, insert the hook into the other square's corner space up here. And then what we're going to do is, see how it's still, my square is still on my hook. I got the new square on. Scoop up the yarn, bring it through. Now bring that loop through the loop that's already on your hook, just like that. And now our squares are officially connected, okay? Now grab that yarn and we're going to turn and kind of leave this square over here for a minute and finish your corner. So work 3 double crochets. So instead of doing that chain 1, we just did a slip stitch into the other square, okay? So 1 double crochet. Whoops, let's get that end out of the way. Okay, 2 double crochet and 3 double crochet, just like that. Now normally we would do a chain 1 here, but we want to join the next space. So locate that on your square, which is right here. You line everything up. And what we're going to do is take your hook and go in from the top, reach back and scoop up that yarn, bring that loop through the loop already on your hook, and now it's joined, okay? So hop over to the next part of your square that you're working on and work 3 double crochets to complete that side. So 1, holding that tail along the edge. We got a lot going on here, but it's all good. 2 and 3. Okay, now normally, once again, we would do a chain 1, but we're joining on the side to our square. So locate that next space, which is here. Go in from the top, reach back and scoop up the yarn and bring that loop through the loop that's already on your hook. And then we have another join in that area. Next, we're already at the corner space. So I'm also holding that tail along the edge if you have a tail at that point. You may not. We're going to begin our next corner by working 3 double crochet. So 1, 2, and 3. And normally we would once again do a chain 1, but we're joining. So that last join that we'll do to hook these 2 together is the corner space of the other square. So you want to make sure everything lines up at all times, and that is, let's get that tail. That tail wants to get involved. That corner space here we're going to join it there. Okay, so reach in with your hook, scoop up that yarn, bring that loop through the loop already on your hook, and then we can complete our corner over here. Let's get that tail out of the way because it's already been sufficiently woven in. Okay, and we're going to just finish up our corner. So work your 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. All right, so chain 1, because we're not joining it, we're done joining our squares, and hop over to the next space and work. This happens to be a side, so work 3 double crochet. 1, 2, oops, my yarn split. Let me just back that up a little bit. Okay, so that's 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1. Let's let go some of this yarn here. And then we have another corner. We're just working the corner like we've been working without the join. So we will be doing the chain 1 here. When you're not joining, you want to do your chain 1s. So 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1. And 3 more double crochets in that corner space. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1, and then that last side space here, do the same thing. 3 double crochet, same thing as we did for other side spaces rather. That's 2 and 3, chain 1, and then we're going to count 3 chains up and join. Same thing we've been doing. There we go. Okay, so next we can cut the yarn and fasten off. Now you'll probably have a lot of ends by now, but if you want to take the time and stop and weave things in, definitely feel free to do that. I'm just going to deal with all mine at the end. Okay, so now we have 2 squares that are joined. Now I like to kind of come through here and sort of straighten everything up. You know, I like to give it a little tug so it looks more uniform. So now we have 2 squares. So we're ready to join some more squares on, okay? So grab another square. We're going to join one more square together. And then I'm going to give you a little bit of a different scenario because we're going to join this one. Instead of doing another one here, which would be exactly how we just did, we're going to join one down here next because I want to show you how to deal with when you're joining it when 2 squares are already there, okay? If you're doing 2 or more squares together. Okay, so let's do the next, whoops, I lost one, it ran off. Okay, there we go. All right, so let's join the next square down below so I can show you this part here, okay? And then we can go ahead and join all of our other squares. All right, so again, corner space, tie the new yarn on, bring it through, tie it right on. Again, if the ends are starting to bother you and get in your way, you can stop and trim things and weave things in if you want to. I'm going to show you how to do that at the end if you're not familiar with that. Okay, so what we're going to do is I like to position them and kind of plan it out first. So I'm going to start down here, come around, join, 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 okay, and then come back down, okay? So let's do that. Just insert your hook, bring up a loop, and you can join right off the bat. It's totally up to you. I like to get a few stitches in first before I join, but that's just a personal preference. Okay, so we did a chain 3. We're starting the square the same way we've been doing. So chain 3, then 2 double crochet, chain 1. Let me just scoot all this over. Got a lot of components here. Okay, so, and then because we're working a corner space, we're going to work 3 more. 1, 2, actually my yarn split back here. Let me just back up a little. You want to make sure you catch those because it will put a strange looking loop in your project that once you get far enough, it'll be harder to pull back or rip back actually. Okay, so that was 1, this is 2, and then 3. Then you're going to chain 1. We're just doing the same thing. We're working our square the same way. 3 double crochet, 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1. We get a little bit more yarn. Okay, so remember we were coming around here, okay? So we're just going to come around this bottom piece. So let's work our corner. 1, 2, 3, chain 1, 3 more double crochet, 1, 2, 3, chain 1, work your side, 1, 2, 3, chain 1. Now let's see where we're at here. All right, we are approaching our next area to join, okay? So let's, we did our chain 1. Let's start the corner. So work 3 double crochet, 1, 2, and 3. Now we're ready to put our join in. So when you have 2 squares like this, you're going to go in between them. So if you pull your squares apart, you can see that there is a hole in between the squares. We're not going to go into the corner spaces like we did before because it'll put it off center. Okay, so go in between the 2 squares just like that with your hook. Go in from the top, reach back, scoop up the yarn, bring that loop through the loop already on your hook. And now we're ready to finish the corner, okay? So just work 3 double crochet again. 1, 2, and 3. So anytime you have 2 or more squares that you need to join, go in between them instead of the corner space. Okay, now let's go into the next area for our join. Go in from the top, reach back, scoop up the yarn, bring that loop through the loop that's already on your hook. And then we can work the next side. So work 3 double crochet, 1, 2, and 3. Basically, once again, like we did before, instead of doing that chain 1, we're going to join with a slip stitch into the other square. So reach back, scoop up the yarn, bring that loop through the loop already on your hook. And then we're ready. We're already at the next corner, okay? So work 3 double crochet, 1, 2, 3. Let me get a little bit more yarn here. Okay, and then we have one more join to do before we finish this row. So locate that corner space, come in from the top, reach back, scoop up the yarn, bring the loop through the loop that's already on your hook, and you can go ahead and now finish that corner. So work 3 double crochet. 1, 2, and 3. Now we can chain 1 because we're not joining anymore. So go ahead and work that side just like that, okay? 1, 2, 3, chain 1, and now we're ready to join. So count 3 chains up, join with a slip stitch to close, okay? So let's cut the yarn, and now we have 3 squares joined onto our piece. Okay, so it's growing. Now what I like to do once again is just sort of straighten everything out. Now we're going to put a single crochet edge around this when we're finished, so it will kind of, whenever you join granny squares, sometimes because we're doing chains which expand and slip stitches which don't really expand, you get sort of it kind of pulls in on the sides. That's totally normal. It's the way it will look, but we'll put a single crochet edge and that'll kind of straighten everything out. Okay, so the next thing you'll want to do is to go ahead and join the rest of your squares onto your project. Okay, so again, when you're joining just a regular space onto one square, again, we're going to do the slip stitch into the space. But when you join into multiple squares, you're going to go in between the squares. Okay, so let's do one more join, because the third scenario where you're going to encounter, and then we can kind of work on our own to finish. But the third scenario you're going to encounter, so we did a regular slip stitch in here, and then when we did 2, you went in between them. But when you have 3, it's kind of a lot going on here. So let's do that, and then we'll kind of work on our own and rejoin the rest. Let me get some yarn here. I'm going to show you that last scenario, and then you'll be all set with anything you may encounter. Okay, so what we're going to do is, once again, tie that new yarn on. Sticking with the blueberry. And I have to say, granny squares are one of the first things I ever learned how to crochet, and they're still my most favorite thing. They're so cheerful and pretty, and this is going to be so pretty hanging on the wall. Okay, so we tie the new yarn on, insert the hook, bring up a loop, chain 3. 1, 2, 3. Now work 2 double crochet. We're doing half of this corner so we can join. Let's try that again. Okay. I'm kind of fighting my hook a little bit. It keeps popping off. Okay, so let's join back here, and then we'll come across and I'll show you how to do that part. So we're going to join into this corner here and work across. So go ahead and just do the same thing. Reach back with your yarn and scoop it up. Now as your piece grows, see how I have it laying on the table? It helps. Join with a slip stitch like we've been doing, and then finish off that corner by working 3 double crochet. So 1, 2, and 3. Now we're ready to join again. So reach back and scoop up the yarn, same thing. Bring that loop through the loop on your hook. Work that side space rather. 1, 2, 3. Okay, there's one more space here to work our slip stitch into. And now we're ready to start the corner. So work half the corner like we've been doing. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and now we're ready to work into that center there. So what you'll want to do is look at your piece a little bit, and you'll want to find that centermost stitch. So they all kind of converge into this, see this little horizontal bar? You'll want to kind of go in that area. Okay, so take your hook and go in from the top like we've been doing, and just kind of go right above that horizontal bar. And that's going to put you in that space there of that other hook. Okay, so reach back, scoop up the yarn. Now bring that loop through the loop already on your hook. The name of the game is to keep things centered. You don't want anything to be off center because it'll be very obvious as you continue to work, okay? Now kind of push everything aside now that it's joined, and you can finish that corner of this square. So work 3 double crochet, 1, 2, and 3. And we'll stop and look at our handiwork when we get a little bit more joined because you can see it a little bit better, okay? So we're still joining because we have another square here. So go into that space from the top, reach back, scoop up the yarn, bring that loop through the loop already on your hook. Work your next 3 double crochet on the side here. 1, 2, 3. Okay, we have another join to make. So locate that, it's right here. Scoop up that yarn, bring that loop through the loop on your hook. And now you're ready to begin the corner here. So 3 double crochet, 1, 2, and 3. All right, our last join for this particular square is up here. So locate that other square's corner space, reach back, scoop up that yarn, bring that loop through the loop on your hook, and complete the corner. So 3 more double crochet, 1, 2, 3. Now we're just finishing the square, so at this point you can chain 1, work your side, 1, 2, 3 double crochets. We have a tail here, so we want to hold that along the edge, and we can chain 1 and then work your corner like you normally would for a regular square. We're not joining anything on. So 3 double crochet, then you want to chain 1. We can turn our work if needed. And then 3 more double crochet. 1, 2, whoops, my hook keeps popping off. Okay, then chain 1, and we just have a little tiny bit more to go. So work your side, again, 3 double crochet. 1, 2, 3, chain 1, and then we can close. So locate that third chain up, join with a slip stitch to close. Okay, so we have 4 connected squares, and by making these 4 join on together, crocheting these together rather, we have encountered all scenarios. So if you're doing 9 squares like me, you'll have all the skills that you need to add more. So you can add your squares and continue along. So we've joined 3 different ways. We've joined into a regular side, we've joined when we have 2 squares and we need to go in between them, and then we've joined a 4th square into 3 existing squares and had to go into the center there. So you'll have all the tools you need to proceed forward. So what I'm going to do is finish joining the rest of my squares, and then when we return, we're going to learn how to create a little single crochet edging to kind of clean it up and straighten things out a little bit. And then we're going to deal with all of these ends. We're going to add some finishing touches to the bottom and the sides. And we're also going to learn how to add a straight piece in here so that we can hang our piece up. Okay, so stay tuned. When we rejoin, I'll have all these connected, and then we're going to add some more things to our wall hanging. Okay, so I have everything joined together, and then I just had a few ends I needed to trim. I taken care of most of them, but if you have some ends that you kind of wove in as you went along, just go ahead and trim those off. Any that you hadn't woven in, just use your tapestry needle. So what we're going to do now is add a single crochet edging to the all around the edge of our piece. Now if you see here, I've already started this, but see how when you join granny squares, you can get a little bit of a dip where each of them are joined. That's perfectly fine because you use a slip stitch to join them. It sometimes can pull them in a little bit, but what we're going to do is work now let me just back up so I can show you this. Now I started up this side here, so you can see it's already creating a little bit of a cleaner edge on my piece. But what we're going to do is just back up because I want to show you how to do this. So for the corners, we've come to a corner space here. We're going to work 3 single crochets into the corner space. So insert your hook, bring up a loop, wrap yarn around hook, bring it through both loops. We're going to put 3 of those in there. So that was 1, 2, and 3. And that's going to help us round the corner of our big project here. Okay. So then when we work on this, we're just going to add a single crochet into each stitch all the way across and a single crochet into each space. So if you come to a space, add a single crochet. If you come to a stitch, add a single crochet. Okay. So I'm at a space, so just work 1 right into that space. And this is just kind of, whoops, I missed one. This is just kind of cleaning up this edge a little bit, okay? Now, if you don't want to do this, that's fine. If you want to do it in a different color, feel free to do that as well. This is your wall art, so definitely take as many creative liberties as possible when you're making your piece. Now, that was a little snug, so let's just go right in the space of that one. But the name of the game here is to just kind of straighten things out a little bit, okay? So we're working into every stitch and every space all the way across. Now I wanted to show you one more thing before we rejoin, but we've come to an area here where 2 squares have joined. Just to hop over to the next stitch that you come to or space. So for me it's this corner space, and then I'm at another stitch again. So it's not super hard. Just look for your stitches and your spaces. Okay, so I'm going to continue around working a single crochet all the way around my granny squares, and then we will rejoin because what we're going to do next is attach our piece onto this beautiful wood knitting needle that I had extra. Or if you have a dowel rod or something else you would like to attach your piece onto. Okay, so I'm going to continue working all the way around my piece here, and then we'll rejoin in just a moment. Okay, so once everything is finished, we're going to get ready to embellish our wall hanging and add our stick to it to give it some stability. Okay, my stick actually is a knitting needle, but like I mentioned before, you can use any type of sturdy stick you like. Okay, so just if you have any ends left, just go ahead and weave those in. I'm just going to grab my tapestry needle and thread it and go in one direction through the back loops. Notice I flipped it over. And this particular plastic needle has a very large eye on it. So you might need to kind of wiggle and twist if you are having similar issues with yours as well. Okay, so then you can just trim. And so now all the ends have been woven in. The next thing we're going to do is grab our needle. So what I want to do is grab the same color, this dark blue, the blueberry, and I'm going to sew mine on. Now I know some people crochet theirs on, but I'm just going to sew mine right on. Now I also wanted to point out that my particular knitting needle does not have a whole lot of overhang. So what you can do is, if you're having the same type of thing going on, you can add a tiny little dot of hot glue to kind of anchor it on there, okay? So what we're going to do is just go into this corner stitch, and we want to pick up both of those loops and see how we're coming from back to front, and you're going to pull it almost all the way through like this, so there's a little tail, and then just tie it together. So just tie your end on there, and that way it'll be anchored into place. Okay, so then what we're going to do is, we'll get that tail out of the way, is take our knitting needle or dowel rod or whatever you're using and just start sewing it right on. So go in to your piece here, and when you come around, bring it around your knitting needle or dowel rod, etc. Okay, go into the next stitch and pull all that snug, and then come into the next stitch, and just make sure when you do that your loop is also going around your stick, okay? And just kind of guide it and line it up nice and neat, okay? Just like that. So it's going to look like this. Now we're just going to keep doing this all the way across. Now if you would rather crochet yours using a slip stitch or a single crochet stitch, feel free to do that as well. I'm going to sew mine on. This is giving me maximum control here. Okay, so see how it's looking so far. So I'm just going to continue all the way across, and when you go in with your tapestry needle, again, make sure you're going into both of those loops. It'll make it nice and flat against the stick that you're attaching it to. And then just pull that in, just like that, and we'll get this tail out of the way. All right, so I'm just going to go all the way across, and then once we get towards the end here, we'll rejoin and we'll add some more details to our wall hanging. Okay, so I'm just coming in around here and putting that last little stitch in to fasten this together. So now to finish, I'm just going to go into the back once again with my needle and create, might need to wiggle that through there, create a loop, and then send the needle back through. We're just tying it off into a knot. And then without removing it from your needle, actually mine's about to fall through, just go ahead and weave that in right on the spot so you don't have to rethread it or anything. Okay, just go in one direction. If you want, come back in the other direction. Now this will be the side that's against the wall, just as a reminder, so that it won't show. Now once again, if you're afraid this will slip off, now I have just a little room here and here. I'm going to add a little drop of hot glue to mine later, and just to anchor it. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we want to create a hanging to hang the top of it, and then we're going to be embellishing it, which is really fun. Okay, so what we want to do is go ahead and take our blue or whatever color. You can really change up the colors if you like. And I'm just going to tie it onto this side. Tie a nice knot. And then however long you'd like to make it. So I'm going to make mine come up and then down, and then I'm going to just pull a little bit more yarn off the yarn ball here and just sort of tie it where you'd like it to go. Now I wanted to mention that I'm using cotton yarn, so the elasticity, it has a little bit more firmer of an elasticity versus yarn that's more springy. So, but if you're using different yarn, just note the weight from this, when you hang it, will pull it down slightly. So you want to make it a little bit more, slightly more taut than you might think you need. Okay, so I'm just going to tie a knot right onto the other side here. And I'm just going twice. Make sure your knot's nice and secure. Okay, now here's our hanging area up here. And now we can embellish our piece. So I've been using this blue quite a bit, the darker blue. So I'm going to go ahead and add some pretty tassels to the sides of my piece. I'm going to do one here, and then one at each corner along the bottom. Now, if you'd like, you could do fringe along the bottom. You could do nothing here and just put a row of tassels. You can really do whatever you like. I am going to use the aqua for these top two, and then I'm going to put some red ones along the bottom. Now, to make a tassel is super duper easy. If you've never made a tassel with me, I don't use any fancy tools. I just use my hands. So cut a piece of yarn about 12 inches. Cut another piece of yarn about 12 inches. And then what we're going to do is grab the yarn ball and we're going to start wrapping it around our hand. So hold your hand out, bring the yarn down the front of your hand, and go ahead and wrap it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. Okay, so I'm going to do 30 wraps. Now, if you want your tassel to be a little bit bigger, definitely do that, or thicker rather. Okay, so we're going to take our first piece of yarn. So what I was saying before is if you want it to be fuller, just simply wrap more times. I'm going to make my tassels a little bit on the smaller side. Okay, so we're going to just send that first piece of yarn we cut. Remember, we cut 2 pieces of yarn. Send the first one through the top here, and then just tie it really tight at the top of this bundle you created, just like that. And then we're going to take the other piece of yarn and just lay it down flat on the table. Lay our little bundle that we created onto the top here. And then we're just going to tie it together. Just like that. See how it creates a little top? Pretty far up, we're going to tie this on. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is take your scissors and go ahead and cut the loops on the bottom part of your tassel. Okay, now here's where you have a little bit of creative license. You can take your wall hanging here and kind of hold it up. I think I want my tassels to be a little bit shorter, so I'm going to give mine a haircut. Just cut those bottoms straight across as neatly as possible. A pair of sharp scissors would help. I've actually recently sharpened these scissors. These were my old scissors before, and now I've sharpened them, and they're as nice and sharp as some of my newer scissors. So if you have a way to sharpen scissors, it will definitely extend the life of them. And some sewing shops, if you take your scissors to a sewing shop, will sharpen them for you for a fee. Okay, so we can tie our first tassel up here like that, and then we'll make another one to match on the other side, and then we're going to put some down at the bottom here in the red color, just to kind of move all the colors throughout the piece. Okay, I wanted to show you one more thing. I made my second tassel, and I wanted to point out, while I have the second one made and our first one's still laying here, that when you're making them, try to make them look as similar as possible to the other one, because it'll really make a difference when you're hanging them side by side. So just hold the other one next to it when you give it its little haircut and try to get it as uniform as possible, because it will make a difference visually as it's hanging. And then you can kind of comb that out. Now I had a little stray piece here, so I'm going to try and tuck that inside of the tassel. It had a little knot in it, so I removed the knot, but now I have a short piece, so we'll just kind of tuck that behind there so it's hidden. Okay, so we have 2 tassels now that we can put on either side of our wall hanging. It's starting to look very festive. So now what we want to do is put a few more tassels. Now again, you can do fringe, which is very pretty. I'm going to do a few more tassels along the bottom here. Now, if you look at the granny squares, you can figure out how you'd like to space them. I'm going to do them at intervals, 1 on each side here. And then see where these spaces are. We're going to put some in those spaces as well. Okay, so I went ahead and made a red tassel and I hated it. So we're going to go ahead and add fringe. And that way you'll be able to see how to make fringe if you choose to do fringe for yours. So we'll stick with the tassels up here. Really am loving the tassels. The red tassels they were kind of competing with the aqua tassels. So sometimes when we're making things, we change it up right in the middle. Okay, so what we want to do is, I grabbed my hook because that's going to help us a lot. So take your red yarn or whatever color you want to use for your fringe. And what we're going to do is I took a length that's about the width of our piece here, just as something to give you a place to measure. And then fold it in half, so the same length, and then fold it in half again, and then you can cut it, okay? So we did 3 folds here. Now, fold that in half, and then what we're going to do is go into this very edge stitch here at the bottom of our piece. So I hope if you want to do tassels along the bottom of yours, definitely feel free to do that. I put one on and I just really didn't love it. So, you know, that's what's so fun about making things. We can just do whatever we want. Okay, so I pulled it through with my crochet hook and I have a loop here. Now send the ends through that loop and just pull tight. Now, I wanted to say too, to not pull too tight because you'll distort these pretty stitches along the bottom here. Okay, so now we have some fringe. All right, so what we're going to do is just repeat all the way across. Now I would start, what I usually do when I do fringe is I go one end, I do the other end, then I do the center, and then I start evenly filling them out, because sometimes if we start here and we just start adding, it's a little bit too dense and we may not get the spacing that we're after. So what I would recommend is do your next one in this bottom corner, then the middle, then the middle of that, then the middle of that, and just start filling it in evenly spaced, symmetrically. Okay, one more thing is that for your tassels, go ahead and, now where did it go? Oh, it's the same color as my aqua yarn, so it's blending in with the yarn I have over here. Grab your tapestry needle and take one of the tails from your tassel and flip it over to the back here. And just go in that last loop or two that you remember we sewed these on. Just go in that last loop. I'm going to go in the last 2 loops just so it's nice and snug. Pull it through. Grab your other end and just tie it right on. Just like that. Okay. So now we have a pretty, very festive tassel. You might want to give it a tug just to make it hang a little bit more naturally. Okay, now with tassels, I want to show you something here. When we tied this on, see how this one piece laid nice and flat? This other one is sort of sticking up. An easy way to deal with that is to thread it, or if it's too short, put your needle in first, thread the end, and if you pull it through the middle of your tassel like this, it'll just blend in and won't stick out anymore. Okay. So go ahead and put your other tassel on, add your fringe, and something else you can add as an embellishment is a pom-pom. So I was going to add 2 or 3 little pom-poms to the top here, totally optional. I am really excited to see how all of you are going to be embellishing yours as well. All right, the last little thing I want to show you is I thought it would be cute to, at the top here, where we hang our wall hanging, to put just 3 little pom-poms, okay? Now, I make my pom-poms the same way. I do them in my hand with no tools. There are some tools if you prefer to do that. Definitely do what you like to do. Now, we had 3 colors on our wall hanging, so I'll do a pom-pom in each color, okay? So cut a piece of yarn and set it aside. And now take your yarn and same thing, let it go down the front of your hand, and just do your wraps. I'm going to do some more wraps this time because I want my pom-pom to be a little bit more dense. Even though it's going to be small, I want it to be dense. So we're going to do more wraps this time. So 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, 59 and 60. So I did do 60 wraps this time versus 30 that we did for the tassel. So slip this bundle that you just created out of your hand very carefully. And then you're going to lay it down onto the table like this. And then for pom-poms, the name of the game is to get it really, really tight. Because after we cut these loops, you're just going to have short strands of yarn held in this bundle. Okay, so get it really nice and tight as you can. being careful not to break the yarn either. You could snap it by tying it too tight too. So just a happy medium there. Okay, and then take these 2 tails that you just did and hold them in your hand, and then we're going to cut our loops, okay? Just going to go through all these loops we created. Just going to cut those loops. This is very similar to the tassel, but it's really where you cut and where you tie the yarn that makes the difference. Okay, anywhere you see a loop, just go ahead and cut that loop. So now it looks a little bit wild, but we're going to fluff it up. You can shake it a little bit, get all the stuff uniform. And then we're going to start trimming it. It does look somewhat like a pom-pom right now, but it doesn't look like a dense, fluffy pom-pom is what we're after. Okay, so we're just going to trim, trim, trim until our pom-pom is as fluffy and dense as we would like it to be. Okay, now these are going to be clustered with other pom-poms, so they're going to be kind of nestled in with other ones as well. So I'm going to keep trimming my pom-pom and make one in red and one in blue. So we'll have a little cluster at the top of our wall hanging. Okay, so when you're finished, you can just tie your tassels on, tie your pom-poms on, and then at the bottom, you want to just take a pair of scissors and just trim all the way across nice and even. So that is how you make the Grannytastic wall hanging. Thanks so much for watching, and be sure and click the subscribe button to get all the latest Fiber Flux video updates. Thanks again!